What is the landscape of the WNBA as we head into August? It's time for our Power Rankings 3.0 here on No Cap Space. And what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is No Cap Space WBB here on this very fine Thursday. Andrew Hobner, happy to be with you. Happy you are here with us. And folks, it is pretty remarkable, but we are nearly to the end of the WNBA regular season. We have a little over a month left of games, and that means the playoff race is heating up, kicking up, and we have so much to discuss. Typically, at the end of the month, on our Substack at nocapspacewbb.com, we release out our power rankings that are compiled over the course of the last 30 days. And so that went up this morning, but it's only fair for you, the YouTube crowd, that you get to enjoy it all the same. But first, a couple of fun little things, starting with our friends at Home Field. As always, use code NOCAP15 to get 15% off your first Home Field purchase. They have a lot of great stuff coming for football season, but we know that you're here for the basketball. If you check out our No Cap Space WBB collection, it is on homefieldapparel.com. It is all of their women's basketball merch that we have curated specially for you. Everything from Purdue to Indiana to Texas Tech, South Carolina to UCLA, North Carolina, LSU, and of course, my favorite, these incredible OG Tennessee Lady Vols bomber jackets in the baby blue. Those just, to me, chef's kiss. So let's talk about a little bit of WNBA basketball. As we mentioned, we have our Power Rankings 3.0 that are up on Substack right now. You can find it on nocapspacewbb.com. Let's take a look through at what we have so far. Minnesota, of course, number one. I don't really see how else we would start this. The win over the Liberty last night was one piece. You can hear that post-game with Shawnee and Tyler that they did after a big Wednesday night slate. It's on our lives here. But to me, I think this is very simple, right? I mean, New York was shorthanded in that game, but what's important to me, point differential, plus 10.4, where they lead the league. Best defense in the WNBA, as I wrote here. 15-1 at home and 15-2 against Western Conference opponents. Now, it's interesting because what that means is that your biggest competition is on the other side of the conference. But in the WNBA, we do not split it up, 4 from the East, 4 from the West, to be the 8 teams that make it to the playoffs. It is the best 8 regardless. So that is noteworthy because Minnesota has had trouble with the Atlanta Dream from a matchup perspective. And so when you look at the fact that if they're 1 and Atlanta's 4, they're going to meet in the semifinals, provided they get through their first round matchups. And so because of that, we are in this place where Minnesota feels like they are the number 1 team. They feel like they are the team that can really run wire to wire here and win the WNBA title. But it comes down to a couple of matchups. With that said, I still think they're our team to beat at number 1. Number 2, the New York Liberty at 17-9. I had them at number 4 in July because they were going through a really rough stretch there with Jonquel Jones out of the lineup. But now as we've seen them in the month of July, I like this idea that they're getting back and rounding into form. Yes, you don't have Stewie, but you do get Emma Mieseman, who all reports say is in New York right now, and that visa process is almost done, getting ready to finish up. Now, Kayla Thornton was a huge part of this Liberty team last year. Kennedy Burke kind of filled that role. She's out for 2 to 4 weeks, and there are a lot of really important games that are coming up in this August and eventually early September. But to me, what was important, these July wins, Phoenix, Indiana, twice, Atlanta, Las Vegas, those to me are, you're beating the teams that are knocking on your door. So we're still in this place where Minnesota and New York still the number 1 and number 2 teams in the league as far as my rankings are concerned. I've got Phoenix here at number 3 because I love Alyssa Thomas as a potential MVP candidate. It feels like in the last couple of years, we've had a runaway favorite. Asia Wilson, I think last year was a runaway favorite. I think that Fee this year is the runaway favorite, and I don't see a situation in which somebody does anything other than come in second. Although with Alyssa Thomas, I think this goes back to her 2023 season where she did finish second in the MVP voting. And the interesting thing about that, for those that don't necessarily remember what happened at that time, that was the infamous A'ja Wilson fourth place vote year. Breanna Stewart won MVP, but the person that actually took away the votes from A'ja to get over the hump and get that MVP over Stewie was actually AT. Very limited amount of first place votes, a lot of second place votes, and a lot of third place votes. And I think that's going to happen again this year with Alyssa Thomas, even though she's been great so far this season. They just don't have a big. And I think that's the thing that keeps me from putting them number one or number two, even if they might get a win here or there against New York or Minnesota. They're just so small. And Nate Tibbetts has played Kalani Brown, the 6'7", former Baylor star, in certain places, but it's still a small five. It is still AT's machine-like consistency as I write. But Satu Sabali and Kalia Copper, as we've seen, it's just streaky. Sometimes you get 30, sometimes you get 10, and you need a little bit more baseline consistency out of your top players if you're going to be in that 1-2 spot, because that's what Minnesota has, where they just give you a comfortable baseline with a high ceiling. New York is a little bit more lower ceiling right now with all the injuries, but their ceiling is still extremely high. I think Phoenix is right there on the outside looking in. Had Atlanta not kind of blown the end of the month here, I would have had them a little higher just because the losses are just really strange, right? Like they lose to Golden State, who's shorthanded with no Kayla Thornton. They almost lost to Dallas last night, which I thought was a pretty wild end of the game. Naz Hillman, 6th Woman of the Year campaign. That's beginning here pretty soon. But I think if you were to want to put Atlanta at 3 over 4, I think that's completely fine. I don't necessarily begrudge you if really anywhere from 3 to 6 with Atlanta, Phoenix, Indiana, and Seattle. If any permutation of those teams at 3 to 6, I think is completely okay. I have them at 4 because I think the Mercury beat the teams they're supposed to beat with a little more regularity than Atlanta does. And I think that scares me a little bit because if you have that type of inconsistency, how can I trust you in an earlier round matchup when I know you have the ceiling to potentially compete for a finals title because you have the capability of matching up with Minnesota or New York from a talent perspective, especially if you get Brittany Griner to start playing the way that she played this past weekend against Phoenix and then Atlanta, where she dropped 17 and then 22, or I'm sorry, Phoenix and then Minnesota. But you have to get that out of her every game. And that's a hard thing. You got to dial back the clock a little more often. And for a player of BG's age and miles and wear and tear, it's tough to do. Indiana's sitting at 5. I didn't move them from our rankings at the beginning of July into June. I'm just really impressed with how they have performed in the wake of Caitlin getting hurt. You know, I think the biggest thing for Indiana is that we know what the floor of the Fever are, right? They're not necessarily a title team with Caitlin out of this lineup. I think they are with her in the lineup. But the fact that you're getting 35 out of Kelsey Mitchell some nights, you're getting 15 plus out of Natasha Howard, 20 and 10s from Leah Boston. Ari McDonald put up 27, a career high in that win last night. And it just feels like there's a lightness. There's more fun. It was a revenge game against DeWanna Bonner, which we'll talk a little bit about. Maybe that's for a ball up top or a Sunday pod or something. Because I thought that was fascinating. I think it's really good for the rivalry and the W generally. But the fact that they seem much more together, much more cohesive. And, you know, there's the hot takes you can make about, like, do they look better without Caitlin, or do they look at least a little bit more balanced without her because she is more ball dominant or she takes more shots, she might turn the ball over more, I don't think it ultimately matters. I think regardless, Caitlin is going to raise your ceiling no matter what. Like, if this is the floor of your team, Caitlin coming in is not going to drop the floor. Caitlin is only going to raise the ceiling. But the fact that you're 3 games over 500 going into August tells me that if you decide to hold on to her and bring her back at some point this year, you have the juice to do this. You know, and when I put up that video a couple weeks ago, it might have even been last week, about potentially shutting Caitlin down for the year, I feel like that was a result of feeling like, okay, what if they keep losing? Do you just kind of cut your losses? Now, if the winning continues after, 15 and 12, you're in contention for even a number 3 seed. You're like a game and a half out of that right now. You could make a reasonable case that Caitlin should shut down for the regular season because, the seeding is safe, and then bring her back for the playoffs. I'm really interested to see how Indiana handles this, because at 15 and 12 going into August with some plus matchups ahead, I actually think that this is one of the more interesting storylines to follow in the W as it pertains to a player potentially coming back. Seattle is still number 6. I'm not going to do too much on them. They're just woefully inconsistent, and it absolutely drives me crazy. You're going to lose to Dallas, you lose to Washington and Connecticut, but then you'll also beat New York and Minnesota. So, what are you? Show me something, please. Vegas is a little different in that I don't think they're inconsistent. I think it's just age, right? I think Father Time is caught up to Chelsea Gray and Jewel Lloyd. I think Jewel has done a nice job, accepting a bench role. Though I don't love Kirsten Bell being the person to go into the starting lineup. I would rather that be Aaliyah Nye. You have Asia Wilson, and Asia is always going to be Asia. We still haven't gotten the return of Cheyenne Parker-Tyus yet, which, I was assuming we were going to get at some point. It doesn't look like that's likely. Melissa Smith's playing fine, but it feels like the top end's just not there. I feel like they can get into a semifinal, but a final or what they were 2 years ago, I don't see it. Maybe my hottest take. I've got the Sparks, despite being 4 games under 508 right now. I think they had a wonderful month of July. 6-2 over that span, or 6-3, I guess now, considering that loss, but played really good basketball, much more cohesive, much more team oriented. Kelsey Plum's been great this month. Hamby's been wonderful this month too. Cam Brink is back in the lineup, and even in limited minutes, we saw her play really well. I want to do a deeper dive on Cam's return to the Sparks, and I want a bigger sample size because I think I'm a little concerned about her playing a similar position as Azurá Stevens, because I watched it last night. It's a lot of Cam not being in the paint, a lot of her running around at 3 levels, which is to be expected, but you need defensive help in the paint, and you need to be on the glass. That is what LA needs, and I want to see how much they decide to do this with Cam, but just given where they are, what the vibes are, how much better they look, I'm taking the Sparks over Washington or Golden State right now. As for Washington, they are where they are. They've been number 9 on my list since the start of the year. I don't have too much on them because I think we know what Washington is at this point. They are a fun core of good players who need some years in this league, and the future is extremely bright. But as of right now, it's probably a first-round exit. You know what? That's okay, given the fact that we thought the tank would be on for Juju, given what the roster looked like at the start of the year. Golden State is at number 10. I think they might have run out of gas, and that's okay. When you're a team that overperforms through a lot of the season, you end up in a place where sometimes you just might run a little low. And I think Natalie Nakase has done an amazing job of building this culture to a point where you might lose a game, but you'll rebound and play very well the next game. There is no give up with this group. Still in the playoff mix, maybe 9 and 10. It wouldn't shock me if they ended up being on the outside looking in of the playoff picture this year. At 11, still the Dallas Wings. I don't know. I mean, I wrote about it in 5 Out this week. Paige is good. Paige is playing towards an all WNBA level. Maybe not first team, but I could see her being the second guard on a second team this season. But you're 7-9 since the Lee Giroux trade, but 1-11 buried you before the year started. Dejanay still doesn't seem very happy with Chris Koklanis, and Chris still does some weird shit, in between, right? Drawing up solid plays or making good adjustments. Then he does stuff like at the end of the Atlanta game last night where you're just like, man, I know that clipboard is so much better. So they're sitting at 11. And honestly, by virtue of the fact that the Sky are at 12, I don't like calling for people's jobs. Jeff Pagliocca probably needs to be fired. He's going to get bailed out this year, and the Alters will probably give him another year just because they have that pick swap with Connecticut that came as a result of the Marina Mabry trade. So they'll get bailed out. They'll probably have a lottery pick come draft time, but I don't get it. I don't get what this year was about, because Tyler Marsh clearly wanted Angel Reese in the point forward role. If that was the conversation you had with Jeff before you got hired to be the head coach, why did you build a roster around the idea that you were going to have 2 bigs and play like Bill Laimbeer old school aces ball? I don't understand this in the slightest. You didn't surround her with shooters. Her and Camilla are kind of still a funky pairing there. I don't know. I don't like what's happening here, and I feel like a lot of this falls at the feet of the GM. As for Connecticut's Connecticut, man. It's good to see them win when they do, but I would like, as much as I'm a big Rashid Messian fan, I'd like to see a little bit more out of Rashid in terms of like getting these players up to speed. The rookies, especially the Layla Lacan, Sanaya Rivers backcourt is really interesting. And like, I kind of want them to keep that for the future, because I think that's a really, really cool backcourt combo that they have. Anissa Moro is getting more minutes. But I'm really curious to see what happens here. I mean, Olivia Nelson-Adota is a potential free agent this year, and I would be shocked if she sticks around at 6'5", 24 years old center. That's someone I'd want in my core personally, but you're going to have to pay her commensurate to what the new CBA dictates. So if you're really trying to cut corners on finances the way the Sun are, you know, how much are we going to get this? Like, is Connecticut going to turn into the Oakland A's of the WNBA? I really hope that's not the case, because they're a very historic franchise. Jen Rosati does a great job as team president. They have stayed competitive for a really long time, but it feels like we're entering a new era in the WNBA, and it's piss or get off the pot in a lot of ways. So that's what we got. If you want to see and read the full rankings and why I put people where I did, you can find it on nocapspacewbb.com as always. And we're glad to have you with us here on our YouTube channel as well. Subscribe, like, share. We're doing a big Apple Podcast push. If you can give us 5 stars, write us a kind review on Ball Up Top, we would love that. And continue to subscribe. Get your friends to subscribe on the YouTube channel. We are still on the road to 5,000, and we are cooking along the way. Got some special stuff coming for all of you once we hit 5K as well. That's all the time we got. Quick little ditty today on No Cap Space WBB. As always, you can find us everywhere on socials, and we will see y'all very, very soon.